Hey everyone, this is Michael Drain from the Unpopular Culture Podcast. You are listening to the BS Podcast Network. Hope you enjoy the show.
This is Officer Moweekend coming to you straight from Port Fourchon, Louisiana, on the beautiful Gulf of Mexico. You're listening to the Magic Our Way podcast with your hosts Kevin, Danny, Eli, and the ever so lovely Lee Lastovica. Take it away, guys.
Jumbo, everyone.
Harambe.
And welcome to another edition of the Magic Our Way podcast. Asante Sana, everyone. You are listening to the Magic Our Way podcast from New Orleans, Louisiana, in the United States of America. We are artistic buffs talking about Disney stuff, and this is a show in which every opinion is welcome. MagicOurWay.com is where you can find us. My name is Kevin.
And I am Danny.
And on this show, we follow the Disney concept of edutainment, where we focus on your entertainment, and along the way, you just might learn a thing or two.
Hey.
And as always, to join in the discussion, we have our resident comic genius from AveryComics.com, Mr. Eli Avery. How you doing, sir?
I am doing good, gentlemen. How y'all doing this fine weekend?
We are splendiferous.
I like that word.
You like that?
I do like that.
I'm lonely.
Oh,
You lonely.
Yeah, dude. I'm looking at walls in here, man. Shoot.
lonely, my Mr. Lonely.
I hear you.
Like Kevin, is like, oh God, I got to get out of here because there's too many people in the house. But I mean, like for me, there's only 3 people in the house. When I get in the man cave, it gets a little isolated.
More so, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Because you look around and there's seats, and it's like, man, these are where the guys used to sit when we did this, but now they're all up in my ear. Sorry.
All I see is Michael Myers masks and haunted mansion faces, and it's a little bit quiet in here.
Yeah, haunted faces and worn out places.
Haunted faces, worn out places, and yes.
Let's add to those haunted faces, and we got our resident travel agent from Magical Moments Vacations, this Shaggy TA, Lee Lastovica. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, man. I read something the other day that said, when we get out of this quarantine, you got 3 choices. You're going to be a hunk, a chunk, or a drunk. But I think I'm going to be a double chunk myself. But dang, I'm just ready to get back into society and see some faces, man. It's crazy.
Faces,
right
places?
Yeah.
Can I be once, twice, 3 times a drunk?
I was going to say, you mean that be the drunk before?
Can I have junk in my trunk while I'm drunk?
There you go.
Okay.
Drop it low, boy. Drop it low.
I mean, I could be a chunky hunk, I guess, but...
Or you could be a chunky, hunky drunk.
Do your sandwiches bring all the boys to the yard, and dang right, they're better than yours?
Yes, my kitchen sink brings all the boys to the yard.
That's right. You show it to him, Farrah Fawcett. You show it to him.
That's right. To bring a little Disney into this.
Because you're in the cabin in the woods out there, Kev. I mean, you're more isolated. Like, when it comes to isolation, it's hard to be more isolated than what you are in Costa de Estoque. So you tell us.
Oh, no, I'm doing pretty good. I mean, there's 5 of us in here, and the house maintains a pretty active feel for sure. So there's no escape from that. In fact, I've been working at home, so I enjoy working at home, but I'd like to have the option to see people every now and then, to go out and hang out with friends and stuff.
You are a people person. You are.
I am a people person. Yeah, I do. But I also like being home. I enjoy being able to spend time with my family. That's a luxury I don't get to have often because I'm always working kind of stuff. But I this past month has been at least a treat for me in this respect. But we would as a family as a whole, we would like to have the option to see our friends.
It'd be nice, but you're enjoying being wrapped up in your own geosphere, if you will.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yes.
We definitely are.
You have your own ecosystem.
In fact, yes, absolutely.
Your own EQ system.
EQ system, right there in the middle of the woods where Disney almost built the parks, the Walt Disney World Resort. How about that? And speaking of which, look at that. I segue, and that's the topic of the show. Guys, look, listen, last week, man, we started talking about Disney and the relationship with New Orleans. We talk about New Orleans Square as well as Walt's love for Disney, so check that show out. This week, today, this show right here, we are talking the Journey East, in which Walt was exploring areas for Walt Disney World, as well as talking about the Lake Buena Vista New Orleans Square resort that never did come to fruition. And of course, we're going to relate this to our beloved city, New Orleans, and talk about all those experiences. You guys are a little bit more educated in the fact that New Orleans is more than just Bourbon Street, guys. There's a lot more to the city than you think, which is why a lot of people can never leave. Once they get here, they just fall in love, just like Walt. You know, they always want to come and visit. You know, it always has a big space in their heart. So look, we're about to talk about more New Orleans and Disney magic right here on this show. So enough of my jibber jabber. Let's go discuss more New Orleans Disney magic. All right, Mohicans, ladies and gentlemen. In case you didn't know or are a first-time listener to our show, we are a New Orleans-based Disney podcast. But some of you may ask yourself, South, what does that even mean? Well, allow me to tell you. Danny, Eli, and myself all hail from New Orleans, the Crescent City, the Big Easy, however you want to refer to it. We all went to high school together. We grew up here. Some of us were born here. And, you know, Lee, even though he doesn't hail from New Orleans, he's from what used to be considered our sister city. But you know what? Houston done freaking ate too much money. And now look at it. It's much bigger than New Orleans. But look, we have great pride in the city of New Orleans and the surrounding areas. And it just so happens we also have a great love for Disney. So look, if you haven't done so, check out our previous show in which we discuss Walt's love for New Orleans and New Orleans Square in Disneyland. You're going to enjoy it because we're about to continue this conversation here. We're going to explore more of this connection between the two. And of course, to help us, we have to bring back longtime Mohican listener X, a.k.a. Keith. How you doing, sir?
Good. How's everyone doing in New Orleans today and Houston?
Oh, it's awesome, man. You know, we've been hanging out in the quarter, you know, giving everybody high fives.
Hugs all around.
Yes.
Yeah. Hugging. Like lots of hugging bear. We're hugging.
That's a lot of hugging.
That's a lots of hugging. But man, look, I'm excited to continue the subject because, you know, these are two things that are very near and dear to our hearts for sure. Keith, what are we talking about today, sir?
So today we're going to kind of change gears a little bit, kind of step away from Disneyland, but we're still going to have the New Orleans connection. We're going to head south and we're going to head to Disney World and talk about New Orleans connection to Disney World.
But Walt ain't dead yet, right?
No, Walt's not dead yet.
Yes,
no.
Walt's still living. Hey, look, this is good times. All right.
Walt is still around.
Yes.
And
all right.
And look, New Orleanians' love for Walt Disney World is no doubt. You know, like I said on the before, half of us go down to Disney World during Mardi Gras or Thanksgiving or whenever we have off, separate from the rest of the country, just to take advantage of that time. So, man, I'm excited to take us to this trip, man. Where do you want to start?
Let's start with talking about how New Orleans was a site location for actually Disney World.
You mean my backyard?
Yes. And actually, specifically, Kevin, I'm going to drill into New Orleans a little bit further, the North Shore.
That's where I'm living right now. How about that?
Well, as Disney World was planned, Walt explored many different areas for his new park, and one of the locations he included was New Orleans. So going back to Walt's love in New Orleans, the story goes that Walt wanted Disney World to be in Metro New Orleans, specifically the North Shore, where Kevin lives.
In North Shore, just to let the listeners know, it's about maybe 45 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic. So if you're from towns like, say, Atlanta, where that's no big deal, that's a everyday occurrence as far as commute, you can kind of judge what that feels like. So not that far. It's just right across the lake. And the only reason why it takes that long is there's a big freaking lake that separates the North Shore from New Orleans. And the North Shore used to be where a lot of New Orleans would go on vacation. This is where a lot of them have their vacation homes. And a lot of the architecture you'll see in New Orleans can also be found here in Mandeville, where I live. That's probably one of the reasons that he was considering this as a place.
Now, I guess, Kevin, back in the, late 1960s, I guess that land, like you said, was further away, so it was probably cheap land back then, as far as not built up, I mean.
That's correct. Yeah, the land, and I think you're referring to the area between Lacombe and Slidell. Is that correct, Lee?
Correct.
So that a lot of that land, you know, you got Bayou Lacombe and surrounding areas were not terribly developed. You had the little town of Lacombe, but still, even today, it's not extremely developed. But there's a lot of empty land out there, a lot of forest, trees, all kind of stuff. There's even a wildlife refuge. Yeah, a lot of expensive stuff was in Mandeville because that's where a lot of the rich New Orleanians would build their homes. But yeah, the land just to the east of me, between Lacombe and Slidell, and look up on a map. Yeah, probably definitely a lot cheaper than it is now.
Well, it was kind of rumored that was the area that Walt was looking to put Disney World, and it's even rumored that he even bought up some land in that area. And he did a scouting trip to New Orleans on November 22nd, 1963. Anyone know what happened on that date?
Kennedy got shot.
Yeah. I don't know if that put a damper on New Orleans, obviously not being the choice for Disney World.
But if you watch JFK, Keith, we had a lot to do with what happened to JFK getting shot.
Did it also happen to do with not having New Orleans be a site for Disney World?
I think David Ferry was chartering the plane that Walt was riding in, and he had to make a detour into Dallas.
Ah, okay. That would explain it.
After that, Walt was like, no.
Yeah.
Back
David
to the
Ferry
left.
character. Yeah.
Back to the left.
We're not stopping here. No, we're not doing that.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is that, Walt was kind of looking at the land, and then he started, kind of just exploring, kind of dealing with, local, governors and, what do they call the people there? The
Politicians,
mayors. You have parishes, we have counties, so I'm not sure if you still call it mayors there. So that's kind of.
Oh no, yeah, that's still good. Yeah,
okay, so you still have mayors.
Yeah.
Okay,
or
okay,
crooked, either one you can.
Yeah,
well, parish presidents.
If you watch Dukes
depending
of
on the township.
Hazzard, I think Boss Hogg was a
yeah, mayors would be townships, but if not, it's a parish president.
All right, so Walt kind of, started talking with some of them, and I was talking with Lee a little bit about this, is apparently, not to put New Orleans in a bad light, but apparently some of them are a little bit pushy and a little bit corrupt, per se.
No, that's an accurate fact. That's not just New Orleans, but the entire freaking state.
Get out of here.
I'm surprised. I'm shocked to hear this.
I know. Look at them.
News.
They're so surprised. They're shocked.
So imagine, Walt kind of dealing with some of these lawmakers and kind of, find this information out. And I think he kind of said, I kind of want to step back from this a little bit and maybe not really kind of deal with this. So bottom line is he kind of stepped away from New Orleans, and, a town called Orlando was offering Walt tax breaks and had easier legislation to give him the land and allowed him to build his Disneyland in the South and his dream of Epcot. So, it was a lot easier for him to build in Orlando. So it was just interesting, though, that was even a choice. Once again, going back to Walt, he's loving New Orleans, and he chose this as a location for Disney World.
Look, let me just tell you this, because I love this area, but if Six Flags can't even make it here, then yeah, something's wrong. Okay?
Well, taxes are not a joke here. I mean, it's always some news where a new business wants to start here because they like the area, and once the politicians get involved, they got to get their palms greased. I mean, for lack of a better word, and the business never comes here.
That's why they went to Houston.
We're famous. We're famous for gumbo, the Saints, beignets, and crooked
Mardi Gras
politicians.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, don't forget that immortal election when David Duke the head of the KKK, ran against Edwin Edwards, who had been indicted God knows how many times, and the byline for that election was "Vote for the crook. It's important." So that was it. You had a choice between a crook and a racist, and we voted the crook in the office, and he served, and then he went back to jail because he crooked. Because that's what crooks are known to do. But I want to talk about this because I've talked about this on the show before, and this is one of my favorite New Orleans stories because I remember being a kid, growing up in New Orleans, and to my taste, and for any kid's taste, I'm sure was the same for all of y'all. I'm like, man, we don't go to Disney World enough. I want to go to Disney World. I'm 8 years old, man. There's Disney World. There's rides. There's, all these characters. I want to go to Disney World. And I'm like, why don't we go to Disney World? And my grandparents and my great uncles and my great aunts would always look at me like, Disney World was going to be built here. And I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, what happened? They're like, greedy politicians. And as a kid, I don't know what politics is. So I'm like, wait a minute. Already I feel shitty that I'm not going to be going to Disney World, but now you're making me even feel worse because I could be going to Disney World every weekend. But no, because politicians stopped it. What are you talking about here? This went over. I thought it was just a wise tale. You know what I'm saying? Like the old, rumor mill kind of thing. I thought it was nothing serious until like we started really kind of doing this podcast, and you really do some research and you find out that there is a lot of truth, as Keith already alluded to this story. And most notably, and I don't think Keith mentioned the guy's name, but the former Slidell mayor, Sidney Caruso, corroborated the story, where it was like he said that there was a point in time that during Kennedy's assassination that Walt visited Louisiana. He got shook down by a bunch of local politicians and said, screw this. I don't need this. And he went to Orlando, as Keith alluded to. And there was a part of me where I was like, well, I've read just about every single biography there is on Walt Disney. I want to know if there's any independent, corroboration between this local legend, because like I said, I was hearing it when we're talking about mid 80s. I was hearing this. Sidney Caruso went public in 1991 about the exact circumstances about what happened with this deal. And it was supposed to be built in Bayou Sauvage and all that stuff. And I was curious. I was like, is this an old wives' tale or is this really true? And come to find out, as I was kind of looking into it, and I mean, the Disney Corporation, obviously Disney, they're very adept storytellers. When they say something, it's kind of, they're going to tell it to you in the best way that it makes, storytelling sense.
Good light. Yeah.
A good light. Thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
That's the best way to put it. So I was like, is there any independent verification that Walt was actually here and took a trip in 1963 to New Orleans? And come to find out that there is independent verification that Walt was here in New Orleans in 1963 on the exact same day that Kennedy was shot. Any of y'all read Neil Gabler's book about Walt Disney, the biography? It was like Triumph of an American Original, something like that. I can't remember what it was. It's escaping me any of y'all read that book? It's a very famous biography of Walt Disney.
I have not, but I will put that in my Amazon.
I think it's sitting on my bookshelf right now.
It's sitting on my book. Thank you. It's sitting on my bookshelf as well. And I went right through that book and I looked for every reference to New Orleans. And don't you know that when Walt was looking for a location for Walt Disney World, he traveled to Orlando. They talked about him traveling around the world, looking and going to Orlando, and they make a specific reference that Walt learned of John F. Kennedy's assassination while he was in New Orleans on a refueling trip on his way to Orlando. And I just can't help but think. Now, Sidney Caruso's story was published in 1991. That Neil Gabler biography was published in 2006. I can't help but believe that we've been, because this hasn't been New Orleans legend for a long time. I heard this in the 80s that Walt planned to build Walt Disney World here. That is the first independent verification that I found that Walt Disney was in New Orleans, Louisiana on the day Kennedy was shot, and that's how he learned about it, which corroborates Sidney Caruso's story that Walt was here that day.
Yeah, no, I totally believe that. Even if people argue, hey, it was just a refueling stop. No, look. We know that Walt loved New Orleans and that whole little area. So who's to say, like, somebody might have told him, hey, since we're here, let's see if we can build it here. So there's definite plausible reason that he could have considered this as one of the possible areas for Walt Disney World.
Right. Does it prove anything? No, but it does show that Walt Disney, at least part of Sidney Caruso's story, was true. And if that part of it's true, who's to say the rest of it isn't? That was always a thing of mine as a kid. I felt mad because local politicians screwed me out of having Walt Disney World here. And come to find out that there is a real verifiable point that Walt did consider this place, at least in according to Sidney, and the factual record seems to bear it out that he did come here. And I kind of tend to agree that it probably wasn't just a refueling trip.
Yeah, I never heard this backstory about politicians and things like that before. I had always heard, that just the land was, he could get the better deal or, whatever the case may be. But it doesn't take, a genius to put two and two together that this is a possibility, And let's be honest. Someone like Walt, with all the money he had, all the power he has, to just casually be in New Orleans, no, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that he was here for a specific reason, maybe on his way to Florida, but he wasn't just passing through.
Right. Even if he was passing through, if he stopped, he still would have thought, hey, you like this area so much, won't you give that a thought? Because to be fair, even today, land is pretty cheap in New Orleans, in Louisiana, as compared to a lot of different areas in the country. So yeah, as a businessman, it makes sense to why not research this area because he could save a lot of money.
And that was the exact legend that I heard, that he did research it, and immediately politicians were looking for a handout, a bribe. They shook him down. They raised the cost of the land, and he just got disgusted and said, you know what? Orlando's going to give me everything I want, whereas Louisiana's going to shake me down for everything I have.
Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, buddy. We can imagine the food that would have been in that Disneyland. Oh, man. Good Lord.
Dude, it's easier to import food than to be taxed at your rear end.
I hear you. No, I hear you. That's sad to hear. Now, the sad part is I wish I could say, man, I'll buy that. Our politicians would have never let that happen. But no, I totally could see that going on.
Oh, it happened. I completely believe that happened.
Yeah. All we want you to do, Walt, is bring about 5 sacks of money up there on the Brinks truck. And that's all we're going to need. That's going to take care of you for a whole month. You start this park right here, I guarantee you. Yeah, that wouldn't have worked.
All right. What's next?
All right. So another, jumping ahead a little bit, another New Orleans reference, specifically, we have Disney Springs.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And before Disney Springs, it was Downtown Disney.
Yes.
And before Downtown Disney, it was basically the Lake Buena Vista Village. Or the Walt Disney World,
the Village Marketplace,
yeah,
Walt Disney World Village, all
yeah.
That.
So another New Orleans reference is the Empress Lily, which is the paddle wheeler boat that you have down there, which opened on May 1st, 1977. At the time, none of the other steamboats on Walt Disney's property were named after a woman. This ship specifically was named after Walt Disney's widow, Lillian, hence the name Empress Lily. So once again, you have another steamboat, going back to your New Orleans connection. Now, interesting fact, though, is did you know that the Empress Lily is not actually, when you look at it, you would swear it's a boat, correct?
Yeah, it's convincing for sure. Absolutely.
It's actually anchored on submerged concrete foundation, and then they just built the top of it to basically look like a boat. So I just thought that was kind of a little bit interesting.
Disney magic.
Sneaky.
So technically that boat is not really ever going anywhere.
No.
Kind of like our casinos here in New Orleans.
Right, exactly. Yeah, too bad they didn't open up that as a casino if they had the legislation back then. But
a Disney casino. Oh, my God, dude. Wait a minute. Time out.
If only Florida had our politicians.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? I'd never leave.
They can beat me in craps.
No, but Lillian did. She christened the Empress Lily when they launched it. Yeah, or not launched it, but at least opened it, I should say.
Right, and that specific boat or steamboat or whatever you want to call it, it had 3 specific different restaurants, and then it had a jazz bar. Once again, going back to New Orleans, but the Empress Lily basically was sitting there, in Lake Buena Vista Village. And in the mid-1970s, there was a plan for a phase 2 of the shopping village area, which actually would have included an extension of the monorail, people movers, and also an urban massive train transit station, which would have linked Disney World to a planned state transit, basically a train. So it's kind of interesting where they were going to expand that area. So they were going to obviously, have it connected to the Magic Kingdom and Epcot at the time, by monorail. They were going to add some office buildings to that area. And, they were going to build some more stores, maybe add some more restaurants. So unfortunately, those plans were put on hold until back into the 1982, the early 1980s, where ideas began to swirl again about a new direction for the village's expansion, which included something that was already tested. You could call it the first IP, if you will. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to basically build a New Orleans-type hotel basically attached to the Walt Disney World Village.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. And just to give some context for people that are in the area, at the same time, we were hosting the 1984 World's Fair right here in New Orleans, speaking of theme parks.
Oh, there you go.
So,
which was an economic flop, by the way.
A very big economic flop. Massive economic flop.
Gargantuan even.
The juggernaut of massive flops.
What was the big signature item? Did they have one?
Oh, God. Was it the space shuttle?
I know one of the big features was a gondola, which was like basically your sky buckets that would traverse.
Which was terrifying.
They had I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say that was absolutely terrifying to
it was.
Imagine, it's one thing to be suspended over the Mississippi River and cross it in these little sky buckets, and knowing that if any of those sky buckets fail, you're plummeting into the Mississippi River.
Into the Mississippi.
Right.
Yes.
But to be, oh my God, I can't even guesstimate how high this was.
It was as high as our bridges, the Greater New Orleans Bridge, or the Crescent City Connection, they call it now. I forget how tall that is.
You're talking about, oh my God. I mean, the highest building in New Orleans didn't even cover it. I mean, you're so high in the air.
It's really high.
It's really, 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 really high. And you would
Yes.
go across it. And I remember being a child crossing the Mississippi River in those sky buckets and thinking that it was akin to child abuse because my parents were making me go. And I was like, I don't want to be that high up in the air crossing the Mississippi River. And it was terrifying. The whole thing was terrifying. It really was. Nothing ever happened. No accident. Well, there was one time when they did let a car fall into the Mississippi River, but I think they were like filming a movie. It was like some B-level movie or something like that where they did let. So no accidental dropping of a New Orleanian ever happened during that time because they'd be dead. It's like a little coffin. You know, you drop you in the water and they just bury you with it.
And just like Disney rides, every now and then it would stop because playful spooks would interrupt your journey, and there you would be dangling over the Mississippi River.
It was thousands of feet in the air. It was it was terrifying.
And the reason why it had to be super tall is because you had to clear the tanker ships that would traverse the Mississippi. So it had to be tall.
Can you imagine you're going across this thing and then like you're going above a ship and it lets out a big puff of smoke, and I'm like, who thought that was a good idea? Like, I don't get that.
None of it. Like when he asked like what the big draw was, like this wasn't a draw. This was a stay away kind of, like, to me, like they brought in the space shuttle. They brought in.
We had a monorail to bring some Disney into this. We had a monorail that traversed the park.
We had a lot of stuff at the World's Fair, but nothing that would make me want to cross the Mississippi. I can tell you that.
Well, you know what that sounds like to me? It sounds like the Skyliner now in Disney World.
No,
but much higher. Yes,
steroids.
I was going to say, okay, take what the Skyliner did and raise that up like 3 times the level of how high the Skyliner is, and then traverse like the wildest river. The wildest river this side of the wilderness.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah, no, it was scary, dude. It was really, really, really scary.
Hey, look, if you're curious, we were suspended 320 feet above the river.
Is that what it was? 320 feet?
That's what it was. 320 feet of river,
really
and we traversed 2,500 feet across the river.
Yeah, that's instant death right there.
Yes.
Well, maybe it was good that Walt didn't build Disney World in New Orleans, or else that would have been one of the rides going across the Mississippi, right? All right, kind of circling back. So you had the Walt Disney World Village, you had the Empress Willie, and then Dick Nunes, who was president of the Disney Parks, said in the May 1982 issue of the Cass newspaper, Eyes and Ears, that he wanted to develop a New Orleans-style hotel. Specifically, his words were, "From the Empress Willie, we're going into New Orleans Street, and you walk right into a beautiful New Orleans hotel." And this would then be called Lake Buena Vista New Orleans Square.
I'd stay there.
So basically what this was, and I found some original artwork, which was dated April 16th, 1982. Well, it was revised that date and actually originally issued September 16th, 1981. So kind of a throws stone away from the Empress Willie. So they had, kind of that Florida, kind of that southern, the Florida moss and kind of that vegetation to kind of set the atmosphere and kind of the mood. And you would basically take a water taxi from the edge of the village, the Empress Willie, into this New Orleans kind of square hotel kind of area, similar to what you do at the Port Orleans Hotel, on the Susquehanna River today.
You talk about like Spanish moss and all that?
Yes,
kind of,
yes.
Well, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the Sassagoula River, I think is what they call it.
Sassagoula, yes.
And you know what they call it, the Sassagoula, right?
Why do they call it the Sassagoula
Why do they call it
River?
Sassagoula?
That was a Native American term for the Mississippi River.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's where they got the name for Sassagoula. But I mean, no, Keith is actually that's right.
It's a catchy name.
Sassagoula.
Yeah.
It's like sarsaparilla.
Yeah. Don't they make you want to put it with some soda or something? Yeah. Kind of like that.
Or a Long Island iced tea, eh, Eli?
Yeah. Only the ultimate will count.
There you go. Right at the pool bar, yes? Just to advertise? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk about that more on the next show because that's when we actually talk about the resorts.
Yeah, let's figure out what this first Disney resort was going to be like. Go ahead.
That sounds good, but now I'm thirsty.
So the Lake Buena Vista New Orleans Square. So it was going to have a hotel. They never really came up with a specific name for the hotel. But just picture kind of an old style, kind of New Orleans style, kind of plantation kind of building. Obviously, New Orleans area, Louisiana had a lot of plantations. So there was a 2-story building with kind of wrought iron kind of wrapped around. And that was going to be the signature restaurant as part of this Disney hotel complex. So the restaurant would basically be called it was tentatively titled the Garden Restaurant. And it had one facade facing the Empress Lily and a different facade looking at the lagoon. So it kind of had, kind of water surrounding its area. And the area which I was mentioning where the water taxi would drop you off was a circular drop-off area with heavy vegetation looking like swamplands. And continuing along the waterfront, the outskirts of the city would come into view.
You would have eaten, Keith, and you'd be looking out on Lake Buena Vista?
Well, in one direction.
Correct.
Yeah. That's what I kind of take it as. Okay.
Right. So you would have, once again, a tie to the water. It would be kind of themed, kind of a swampy theme, kind of, an old kind of southern style, plantation. Kind of nearby in that area, there would be, obviously, there's tons of these in New Orleans. There would be a cafe specifically called Cafe New Orleans, which would be a duplicate of the same one that's located in Disneyland. And near the back of the complex, guests could explore the Rouge Royale, and there would be a crafts alley, and there would also be their own Disney version of Preservation Hall as well. They were planning that as well.
Oh, like kind of like a jazz hall where they would
jazz hall. That would have been freaking awesome.
Yeah,
that's a very popular place here in the quarter for sure.
Wait, you said it was what did you say it was a crafts alley?
Craft.
Oh, a craft alley. Okay.
This is the early 1980s, so crafts was a big thing back then.
Oh, no, okay, no, I thought you said crash, because I was like, what's a crash alley? Like, you just walk by and people curse at you? Or what?
Yeah, no, that's in New Orleans, Eli.
Yeah.
In Disney World, they wouldn't have had that. They had crafts. We have crass. We have crass alley.
Okay, I apologize.
I thought you said Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Right.
All right.
No, that's cheese and macaroni, Lee.
Okay, all right, I'm sorry. I actually thought that's what he said, and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I wanted to hear more about that, but craft,
You good,
okay.
you good.
So, in looking at some of the artwork, it's a lot of 2-story buildings, a lot of wrought iron, a lot of, tight little knit streets, kind of a little bit kind of like the French Quarter. So a lot of it was kind of, I think they took a lot of the ideas from New Orleans Square. And, they already had that as a blueprint, and they were kind of, going to have these little streets and then kind of have like these little individual buildings kind of built around these streets where stores and shoppings. And then just, you would just take a water taxi, back to the village. So I think it was kind of a great idea for its day. And, once again, going back to that New Orleans theme.
What I find interesting about that is that you remember because when Disney World first opened up, there was no Pirates of the Caribbean because they said, well, we're in Florida. Who's going to want to visit pirates? I mean, y'all are, neck deep in pirates lore. And the Floridians were like, where are the pirates? And here we are, like New Orleans is like what? If you drive nonstop.
10 hours away if you drive,
10 hours away. And they're like, well, screw it. Let's give them a New Orleans hotel. Like, no, New Orleans on the West Coast makes a whole lot of sense because, I mean, it's too far to get there. But, I mean, an 8-hour, 10-hour drive, that's not that far. But just to kind of get across the idea where they're like, oh, shoot, we need to kind of readjust our thinking to where, people don't like to go too far, right. So that kind of is interesting to me. The idea that we're going to build a New Orleans themed hotel, even though New Orleans is 8 to 10 hours away.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, once it goes back to Walt's love of New Orleans, and he thought it would be somebody in a Disney Imagineering, obviously New Orleans Square is popular in Disneyland, even though, like you said, the real New Orleans was only 10 hours away. They're like, hey, let's expand on New Orleans Square and let's add a hotel to it.
And clean it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's a draw, right? Isn't it? To make sure that it's all clean. All right. So tell us a little bit more about this place, Keith.
Well, it also would have, which is similar to what New Orleans actually has in the French quarters. It would have, horse-drawn carriages, kind of tourism thing, kind of, in the French Quarter, kind of taking you around the grounds. They would have, famous jazz. Like I said, there was going to be a jazz lounge, bar there, so they would have, definitely the music influence. And I'm sure the restaurants would definitely have the New Orleans, food as well. So it obviously had, the big influence of New Orleans.
It kind of makes me wonder because you see this in over at the boardwalk where they have jelly rolls. And Jelly Roll Morton obviously is a famous New Orleanian.
Mm-hmm. And they designed the design of that based upon our Pat O'Brien's.
Pat O'Brien's, obviously a very famous New Orleanian bar. It's probably the most famous bar on Bourbon Street or off.
Yep.
Is it off Bourbon Street? I mean,
it's just they have an entrance on Bourbon Street, but the main entrance is on St. Peter's, which is perpendicular to it. Yeah, you got the hurricane drink, and you have the green jackets that all the staff wears. It's very iconic.
Yeah, but most importantly, you have the dueling piano bar.
Yeah,
dueling piano bar. That is correct.
I thought you would say piano bar right off the bat. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, because it's a whole complex, though. The piano bar is the most famous, but you also got the courtyard with the flame fountain, and you have a separate little bar area that's a little bit quieter than piano bar. It's a whole little complex.
It's interesting because going to the backstory of the hotel a little bit, it's going to sound really familiar later on once we start talking about the Port Orleans and the Dixie Landings. So the Empress Lily restaurant steamboat would serve as the backstory, which would be docked to unload its cargo at this riverfront town in New Orleans, where the guest rooms would have been hidden in buildings resembling cotton mills or a boatwright shop. These rooms would be hidden on the upper floors, with the bottom floor reserved for shops and restaurants. And it was supposed to be a 600-room hotel. So, I mean, that to me, we'll get into it in the next episode, but that's almost like they had the backstory right there set up for Port Orleans and Riverside, but it never got developed at this point. But later on, once we go later on, we'll see how that backstory kind of develops.
Sounds like the very first instance to me of a proposal where you have people staying within a Disney organized community of sorts. Kind of like what Epcot was supposed to be, right? Right. The whole idea of the experimental prototype community of tomorrow, where you had people, living and coming and working and serving within that one particular instance. I mean, now you're talking about guests actually being able to stay within an active component to a Disney thing. I mean, obviously you have resorts that are off site, but I mean, the Disney downtown district at that point in time, that's the first time that I can think of where I've ever heard that you could stay within an active Disney community.
Man, could you imagine if they had built this and the French Quarter area would have become like their nighttime destination, kind of like Pleasure Island or like downtown Disney? How awesome that would have been.
Well, what this reminds me of, Kevin? Remember Church Street Station in Orlando?
Yeah, that's what they based downtown Disney for.
Yeah, kind of similar to like that. This would be basically their version of Pleasure Island before there was Pleasure Island.
And Bourbon Street, by the way, that would be a perfect tie-in to that if you were going to go ahead and go down that route. Now, obviously, absolutely. It doesn't sound like there was that much of a emphasis put on drinking as there was at Pleasure Island. Right. But, I mean, as far as being able to stay within the magic, where you could just walk out your hotel room and then, boom, there are these several different locales that cater to what you're looking for. I mean, that I think that's kind of magical.
Yeah, I'm just looking at these pictures you sent us, Keith, and listeners, I'll post this in our show notes so you have access to this too. But man, these pictures are just amazing. I would have absolutely loved this.
Oh God, I've never stayed at Port Orleans just because I don't need to stay at a place that's themed after exactly where I live. I know,
right?
That's big for Keith. I know Eli stayed there, and it's like, no judgment. I mean, like I'm just saying, like if I want to be reminded.
That's usually where we stay when we go.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I say that's usually where we stay as well, just because it's more for the affordability if you've got 5 people and you can stay in Port Orleans Riverside. But I do like the atmosphere. Again, if that's not something I see day in and day out in the architecture and things like that, I like the Spanish moss and the oak trees and the shrubs and all. I mean, it's a really, to me, it's a very laid back kind of place to stay.
If you like Spanish moss, just look in the mirror, man. you got a little bit dangling off your chin, brother. I can make a pillow off of that.
That's why I grew it, because I missed it so much.
Exactly. So that means you're the oak.
Yes, I'm the
oak. Dude, Kevin, you had to wait till I was drinking to make that.
Oh, I'm sorry, dude.
Did you spit it out, Danny?
You spit all over the mics?
Everywhere, dude.
All of it.
Yeah.
That was good.
We'll have to clean the mics when we get back in the studio.
I didn't mean to bust out laughing like that, though. That was
I laughed.
Yeah.
All right, so what else we got, Keith?
I'm intrigued. This is awesome.
So, unfortunately, imagine a hotel where you could just walk to the Disney Village. And like you said, it would have been awesome. I guess it's kind of similar to Saratoga Springs where you could walk, but to have a New Orleans theme would have been, really cool. Unfortunately, obviously, this hotel was never developed. And the main reason why was they were looking at early 80s, 81, 82, and Epcot Center ran way over budget. So unfortunately, this phase 2 of the Walt Disney World Village, including, this New Orleans hotel, basically got cut. There was no monorail extended to the Walt Disney World Village, no people mover kind of added, no connection to the, real train transit system. So unfortunately, this idea kind of died, but, like people say at Disney, no idea never really dies.
This is true. This is very, very true.
Well, dude, man, that sounds great, man. That sounds exactly like the kind of experience that you want to have when visiting New Orleans, the architecture, the food, the ambiance. That sounds great.
Well, look, we're going to talk about the resorts, specifically Port Orleans Resort, as well as, I'm sure, Dixie Landing Resort. Is that right, Keith? We're going to do both of them and the unification of both. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. We'll get into a little backstory, and it sounds like Lee stayed there and Eli's been there. We want to hear about your personal experiences as well.
Yeah, and I've stayed at Dixie Landings too, so that should be a very good show for next time. So check out our next show on that. If you haven't done so, check out our previous show when we talk about New Orleans Square in Disneyland, as well as Walt's love for New Orleans on our previous show. So guys, look, we are continuing the discussion. And Keith, you're going to come back? You're going to come back next week?
I'll be back, and definitely appreciate the invite. Great. I love this conversation. Great talking with you guys about New Orleans. And I definitely want to talk about Dixie Landings and Port Orleans.
Yes, looking forward to, because those are, Dixielands, I enjoyed my stay there when I was there. And Port Orleans, I know a lot of the guys on this show have done it. So, yeah, stay tuned. I hope you enjoy this one. Stay tuned, because we're about to deliver some goods on those two resorts.
Mohicans! Hey, this is Jane from MadHatterRadio.net. If you love Disney Park audio like my family and I do, please listen to MadHatterRadio.net for park audio music 24 hours a day.
Be our guest. Be our guest. Put our service to the test. Tie your napkin.
And ladies and gentlemen, Mohicans, here we are in guest services, and this is a segment in which we get to service you, the listener. And today we have ourselves a voicemail left at our phone number, 1-815-MOHICAN. That is 1-815-MOHICAN. 669-4226, guys. And this one comes from our Downs on the Grounds person, Stephen Downs, down there in Orlando. So let's check out and see what he has to say.
Hey guys, this is Stephen Downs from Downs on the Ground out here in Orlando. Just giving you a call about one of your latest shows. We were talking about the Fast Passes. I am a little bit behind on your episode, so that's last week's show. I just wanted to chip in a little.
That's all right, Steve. We're a little behind on you because apparently the parks are open back in whenever we're listening.
That's right.
A little bit because I actually had my dad out here just this past weekend, and we went to Hollywood Studios and Animal Kingdom. And considering that I'm a annual pass holder, like you guys were mentioning, I only have 30 days to book. So I was able to book some stuff, and we actually did everything in both of the parks. And so I hear you guys saying a lot of like, well, I'm sorry, little Timmy, you can't do that because you didn't pay enough to be at the fancy hotels. And I'm not entirely sure that that's true because, I mean, considering I got, what was it? Rock and Roller Coaster Tower of Terror and I can't remember what the third one was, Star Tours. And we queued up for Smuggler's Run. We queued up for Slinky Dog and we did Rise of the Resistance. We also saw the Indiana Jones show. So, like, I'm not entirely sure that, like, that's not really fair to say that not paying a lot of money means you can't do these things. Like I said, we were able to do everything at both parks. We walked out of each park saying we've done everything. I did want to mention one other thing real quick before it cuts me off because I am long-winded. When we're talking about possible alternatives, I would say no fast pass is ideal. When we queued up for Flight of Passage at the end, 195-minute wait, but we got in line at like 7:30. We're like, okay, whatever. Park closed at 8. So we're like, okay, whatever. We're going to ride on this for sure, and then it'll be done at the end of the day. 195 minutes, it's like 3 hours and 15 minutes. We waited less than an hour and a half. And I attribute that to no more fast passes after 8 o'clock being let in because no more fast passes are there. So they were just running people through the line, and waiting less than half of the posted time when we got in the line tells me the fast pass system as a whole, while great for what it looks great, I think is not a good system for overall guest experience. So anyways, I'm going to go before it cuts me off. Thanks for the show, guys. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Wow. This is one of those occasions where I wish we had Stephen on the show to kind of talk about this, to kind of really kind of understand what he was trying to say. Do y'all understand this a little bit better than what I do? Because it's not like...
Well, this is the way I understood him. What he's saying is that we were complaining at some point that not staying on property or not paying, for club level to get the extra fast passes meant that you couldn't get certain fast passes, and then you couldn't experience certain things.
No, I got that as well. Yeah.
And so according to, his experience, he was able to experience everything he wanted to on those two parks. Now, my question would be, was this on a Wednesday, in the middle of off season? There's a lot of different factors that go into that as well.
I was going to say, yeah, my question wouldn't be whether this is a Wednesday or an off day or a Tuesday or a Thursday. My question would be like, did you go to the parks with a 9-year-old who likes to sleep in and doesn't want to be necessarily roused out of bed first thing in the morning?
He said they queued up for Rise of the Resistance, so that says that they got there
right
pretty early. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe, because I think he was probably talking about something I said on a previous show. And by the way, there's nothing that he said that was wrong. If you go into the parks commando style and you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna grip my teeth and I'm gonna do this. Yeah, man, you can make it work. There ain't no doubt about it. Sure, you can. But if you've got children and you've got to figure out a way to make this work, and they want to go ahead and see all this stuff too, but for whatever reason they're not early risers, or you spent too much time
night before.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's not as practical of a way to do it, and that's the thing. Queuing up for an hour and a half as adults, like when we collectively experience things, like when we went to Disneyland together, we waited in line for over an hour for Smuggler's Run. No worries. We're adults. I mean, we can sit there for an hour and have a conversation. Again, try it with a child. That's the only thing I would say is try that exact same philosophy with a child. Why are we doing this? This is boring and I can't believe it. I want to see Peppa Pig. It's a different experience, is what I would say. And I think maybe there was perhaps, and again, maybe I didn't catch the whole thing in trying to understand. I think maybe it was a little miscommunication.
Yeah.
And what either I was trying to say was, am I wrong? Y'all tell me.
I thought he was talking about the finances too. He wasn't?
I didn't hear finances. Did anyone else hear finances?
Yeah, I heard that. He was talking about having to pay more, not getting the benefit of being able to get a bunch of passes based on what you paid for your stay at the resort.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That point. But that was more me saying, and I think what he was referencing was a complaint that I had, which was that if I'm paying top dollar to stay at a Disney resort, why is it that I don't have access to these fast pass reservations?
Right.
Because that's the whole idea of that's the lure that you get me. Like, why am I booking with a Disney resort? Oh, because you can book earlier for fast passes. So if I get on there and I get a 30-day advantage, and is that right, Lee? I get a 30-day advantage. What do I get?
Yeah, you get 30 days ahead of the offsite guests. So 60 days for them, 60 days for you, 30 days for them.
Right. So if Steven is has an annual pass holder, and I have a 30-day advantage on Steven, then why is it that Steven and I's advantage is the exact same thing, which is that we have to go in the park and wait in line? Because the whole idea of me as a father is that, okay, I've got a child here. This is not going to work. Her standing in line for an hour and a half is not going to work. She's going to get bored. She's going to lash out a little bit. I mean, don't get me wrong. Maybe 1 or 2 attractions, I can give her my phone and she'll kill the battery. But I mean, for the most part, yeah, it's not an ideal situation. So I think that's what he's probably responding to, is something that I said earlier about that. Is that y'all's memory of it? I mean, I might be wrong.
That sounds about right. No, it's been a while since we talked about that. But that definitely sounds about right.
Yeah, we definitely need to handle these voicemails when they happen, because it's a little bit easier to reference where it's coming from.
Well, we weren't expecting a global plague also when we were...
Sure, yes.
So, this would still be relevant if the parks were open right now.
Right, but the plague's only been going on now for like 2 months. I mean, we're a little outdated, Lee. Let's. But
I will say this, that if you didn't catch this at the end, what he was actually backing up your point, Danny, that the Fast Pass system in general just clogs it up, because he was originally looking at a good 2-3 hour wait, but it's the end of the day and all the Fast Passes have been distributed. So that 3 hour wait actually turned into about an hour and a half wait, because there was no more people getting Fast Passes on top of, and getting in front of him with their Fast Passes. So once the queue line was allowed to flow without having to interrupting with Fast Pass recipients, that it cut the time in half.
And that makes sense. And that's what I was trying to, as a father who's trying to go ahead and get their child out in the parks and can't necessarily just go commando style and just go. Yeah, you don't have the luxury of being able to line up at 5 a.m. in the morning and see Rise of the Resistance, and now get in line for Slinky Dog, and now you can do it. Yeah, when you can do it strategically as an older male with no children to hold you behind, yeah, you're fine. But as a parent, and if you're booking in a Disney hotel and part of the allure is that you're going to get those earlier Fast Passes, well, then some of those harder to get Fast Passes should be available, because I'm waiting in line no matter what, then what's the point? Yeah, so I think we're both right. I mean, that's my appreciation of it, and it's been a while, and I don't even really remember much what I said, but hopefully we did a good job with that. I don't know.
Yeah, and if not, Steven, man, look, you're more than welcome to come on the show and explain exactly what you're talking about.
Come on the show. Come on we do a hangout every Sunday, apparently, so do that.
Yeah, at some point.
We'll talk.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks. Look, guys, reach out to us if you have a question for us on the Magic Array podcast. You can leave a voicemail. 1-815-MOWEEKEND. That is 1-815-MOWEEKEND. 669-4226. So definitely do that. Or you can shoot us an email at show@magicarway.com, and we'll feature you here on a guest services segment. Well, guys, we hoped you enjoyed that discussion of Lake Buena Vista, New Orleans Square. If you want to learn more about us, magicarway.com is the way to go. There you'll find our social media links, past episodes, and more. You can also get in touch with us to share your opinions. Shoot us an email at show@magicarway.com. Leave us a voicemail via our SpeakPipe widget. Or you can call or text us. Yes, I did say text us at 1-815-MOWEEKEND. That is 1-815-MOWEEKEND. 669-4226. And of course, we have a couple of guys that do things outside of the podcast. First of all, we got Eli, does things with comics. Tell him, sir, what you got going on.
Well, as always, it's always a pleasure to hear you guys' voices and hear the times from the Moweekends out there that are doing good. I want to ask you guys a question really quick. I was thinking about just releasing the first issue of the book on the Ivory Comics website. You guys think I should do that?
You're talking about releasing the book called The First Ivory Comics Website?
Oh, no, releasing the first issue of Savages, because I can't print it. So I was thinking about it, because, you talking with Keith and everything and just reminiscing and stuff. This is why we do creative things. So I was thinking about talking with Jeremiah, because, that's fans and co-creator and whatnot. But I want to kind of get y'all's general thoughts. So should I release the first book of Savages on the Ivory Comics website. What do you think? Free of charge?
Yeah, sure, go.
Let me give you my opinion. We have a lot of artists and things right now that are doing concerts online, and I think it's a good way to let the people be involved. And they're like, hey, man, I didn't get to go to the concert because it got canceled or whatever, and they're doing it online. And some people are doing it for free, and some people are charging a little bit. But, I think to me, I've taken the time to watch a couple concerts that I would have loved to have gone to, but, I probably wouldn't have paid the money to go see them, but I did pay the $20 to see them on the TV. So, I think it keeps the fans involved and it keeps your name out there. So that's not a bad idea.
When it comes to my opinion on the show, especially during the closing, my opinion's always the same. And that opinion is MOW weekend. No, I think in this day and age where people can't go anywhere or do anything, like the more entertainment value that you can give them, the better. Especially in this day and age, like it's where original content, not watching reruns, not watching the same old stuff, it's hard to come by. I think the more interactive and original content you can give, the better.
Yeah, and so Eli, just in case you decide not to do that, where can they find your stuff?
Oh, no, I wanted to run that by you guys first, so I'm pretty sure I am going to do that. Okay, so you can go to ivorycomics.com and see the artwork that's there for The Molly Be Damned and Project Geisha, and more than likely the first issue of Savages. So I hope you enjoy it just as much as you enjoy this podcast, because there's always a link to these podcast episodes, so you never miss one. That's synergy right there for you. If you want to go ahead and check me out on Facebook, always welcome. So Facebook.com. Eli H. Ivory is where you can find me there. You can check out Project Geisha on Facebook as well. So you can just do a search for Project Geisha on the Facebook page, and that will come up. Instagram, I'm always there, posting up hearts and posting up likes. You can find me there at eIvory504. And, of course, on Twitter, I can be found at Hancock10166. So if you appreciate the madness, then you're just bringing me the gladness. Thank you very much.
And if you want to book a vacation anywhere in the world, you can do so through Lee. Lee, tell them how to do this.
Just give me a call, 832-431-1621. That's 832-SHAKEDOWN, 832-SHKDOWN. You can email me at lee@magicourway.com. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/Lostavica Travel. That's LESTOVICA Travel. Instagram, you can find me at You Got a Friend in Lee Travel. Do any of that, we'll get you hooked up and booked up with no
Hasselvika!
What are you going to get him booked up for, Lee?
I don't know, but I really thought that he was going to say posting up hearts and farts. I don't know why. I don't know why you were going to post up your farts, but that's what I heard when you said posting up hearts.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Thanks, Pearl Jam.
Hey, but, we can get you booked up right now for January 1st, 2020. Yeah. That is, I'm sorry. We can get you booked up right now for June 1st, 2020. If you're a brave soul and you want to go out there for the grand reopening and take a chance that they'll actually meet that date, then yeah, we can do that right now. And hopefully we can get you guys booked for 2021 pretty soon as well. Usually around sometime in June we can do those dates, but hopefully they'll maybe even give us some lead time on that, get y'all booked a little earlier for 2021. But Disney's not going anywhere. Start thinking about your next time you want to go, and we'll get you taken care of.
Awesome. And look, if you want to support the show as a whole, you can do so through the following ways. Buy some beignets right there on our homepage. Represent the Mohican Nation wherever you go by purchasing some clothing from our shop. And also, we are part of the BS Podcast Network, so support those guys over there. And the easiest way to support us, doesn't cost a thing, is to leave a rating and a review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you download the show, whether it is Stitcher, Blueberry, Google Play Music, etc. Finally, if you want to have a place in which you can freely speak your Disney mind without fear of retribution, join us in the Mohican Pleasure Island 33 Facebook group. There you will have the chance to interact with all the famous Mohicans, as well as Danny, Eli, Lee, and yours truly. And we thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to us and making us a part of your Disney fan life. We appreciate you and love hearing from our listeners. All opinions are always welcome in the Magic Our Way podcast, so get in touch with us today. So, Mohicans, ladies and gentlemen, we say Kwahurini. My name is Kevin.
And I'm Danny.
Magic out.
I have every intention